Hazing rituals are often considered an integral part of college life, but sometimes they spiral horribly out of control. This is the shocking story of Matthew Carrington, a 21-year-old student who fell victim to a fatal hazing. Matthew William Carrington was born on November 10, 1983, in Walnut Creek, California. He was the only child of Debby and Michael Carrington, though he was primarily raised by his mother after his parents divorced. Despite this challenge, Matthew and his mother had a strong bond. When Debby later remarried Greg Smith, their family was completed by the birth of Matthew's half-brother, Travis. Matthew was an intelligent, caring young man, slightly shy, but always up for a good time. He had a passion for sports and spent a lot of time with his stepfather and younger brother. Though he enjoyed parties, he was never interested in drugs and rarely drank more than a beer. A dedicated student, Matthew graduated from Ygnacio Valley High School and went on to earn his bachelor's degree at Diablo Valley College. In August 2004, he was accepted to California State University in Chico, where he planned to study business. When Matthew told his mother that he wanted to join a fraternity, Chico, she was cautiously optimistic. To Matthew, the fraternity felt like a tight-knit group of friends, but Chico was not officially recognized by the university and was therefore not under any formal oversight. Still, Matthew decided to move forward and join the group. But like many fraternities, there was one condition. He had to endure a hazing ritual. In February 2005, the Hell Week began for Matthew and his friend Mike Quintana. The tasks they were initially asked to perform, such as walking around in a miniskirt or trading shirts with a homeless person, were mostly humorous. But on the night of February 1st, things took a serious and dangerous turn. Matthew and Mike were led to the basement of the fraternity house for the final and most grueling part of their hazing. The basement was cold, dirty, and filled with a sinister atmosphere. Insulting graffiti covered the walls, and above the door, the phrase, "In the basement, no one can hear you," ominously loomed. Under the direction of Jerry Lim, a 25-year-old fraternity member, Matthew and Mike were ordered to strip down, stand on a narrow wooden bench, and endure large fans blowing cold air at them. They were forced to take turns holding a 19-liter water jug, drinking from it while balancing on one leg and answering questions. Any wrong answer was met with a punishment: push-ups on the icy, wet floor. The hours dragged on, and the rituals became increasingly cruel. Hour after hour, the fans continued to blast cold air, and the boys were forced to keep drinking. They grew increasingly exhausted and hypothermic. Around 4 a.m., after the 6th water jug, the first signs of disaster began to show. Matthew became disoriented, his body started to tremble, and his movements grew clumsy. While Mike grew increasingly worried, the fraternity brothers treated it like a game. They believed it was all part of the hazing process, and that the boys simply had to endure it to prove their worth. In reality, Matthew's condition was life-threatening. He had become a victim of a rare but deadly condition: water intoxication. Due to the excessive amounts of water he had been forced to drink, the salt levels in his blood had plummeted dangerously low, causing cerebral edema, swelling of the brain. His body was no longer able to process the abnormal amounts of fluid. As Matthew grew increasingly ill, the brothers interpreted it as a sign of weakness. They thought he just needed to tough it out. It wasn't until Matthew collapsed that his friend Mike realized something was seriously wrong. He begged for someone to call an ambulance, but the other fraternity brothers hesitated, fearful of the consequences of their actions. They didn't want to expose their illegal and prohibited hazing practices. At first, they tried to figure out what was wrong on their own, thinking Matthew just needed to rest. But his condition rapidly deteriorated. What they mistook for snoring was actually the sound of Matthew's body, struggling against the fatal effects of water intoxication. His lungs slowly filled with fluid, and he slipped further into unconsciousness. Mike pleaded with the brothers to get help, and after even more delays, they finally called an ambulance at around 5 a.m. When emergency services arrived, Mike desperately tried to resuscitate his friend, but it was too late. Matthew Carrington died shortly afterward, at just 21 years old. In the aftermath of Matthew's death, the horrifying details of the hazing quickly came to light. The fraternity had attempted to cover up the seriousness of their actions by lying to the paramedics. They claimed that Matthew had suffered a seizure during exercise, but the autopsy report revealed the truth. Matthew had died from acute water intoxication and hypothermia, caused by the brutal and relentless hazing rituals of Chico. Matthew Carrington's death sent shockwaves through the Chico State University community. It quickly became clear that his death was entirely preventable. If the fraternity had sought help sooner, if they had been less reckless, Matthew would still be alive. His mother, Debbie Smith, was devastated by the loss of her only son. But she was determined not to let his death be in vain. Debbie became an unstoppable advocate for reforming hazing laws. She spoke with legislators, worked with other families who had experienced similar tragedies, and fought for justice. In 2006, largely thanks to her efforts, Matt's Law was enacted in California. This law allows for the criminal prosecution of fraternity members for hazing activities that result in injury or death. The law strengthened existing regulations and ensured that fraternity members could be held personally accountable for their actions. Matthew Carrington's death remains a stark reminder of the dangers of hazing rituals that spiral out of control. It is a story about peer pressure, abuse of power, and the reckless behavior of young adults who blindly follow traditions without considering the potential consequences. Although Matthew's life ended tragically, his death left a lasting impact on the lives of countless students. His mother's fight ensured that future generations would be protected from the dangerous and often deadly effects of unregulated hazing practices. The story of Matthew Carrington serves as a warning, not just to fraternities, but to society at large. Peer pressure can be deadly, and the responsibility to protect each other from harm lies with us all.